Hey nerds. I'm going to start talking about this book by Jacques Lacan on feminism. And some people will know that, of course, one of my favorite philosophers, Slavoj Zizek, is a Hegelian slash Lacanian slash Marxist. And so Lacan is one of his main influences. And so before I get into that, of course, please everyone subscribe, like, share, comment. That really helps a lot. And if you happen to be ordering anything at all on Amazon, you can order anything at all through the link of the books that I have in the description, and it'll give me a little bit of extra money at no extra cost to you. And you can tip me for each post in any amount on Patreon. Link is in the description for that as well. And you can give me any amount of money per month on Patreon too. And oh yeah, I also have the link for my Rumble page in there, and subscribe to that too, please. All right. So, of course, like I said, Lacan, as I was getting to, Lacan is one of the first psychoanalysts, but he came after Freud. So in this paragraph, Lacan is talking about Freud's opinion, Freud's psychoanalytical opinion on women. And of course, Freud probably pretty much needs no introduction, but for those who don't know, he's like the founder of psychoanalysis, 20th century psychologist, you could say, or psychiatrist. All right, so we'll get into the paragraph here. Since its inception, psychoanalysis has exerted a fascination for many women. It has relied on women's desire and willingness to articulate their fantasies, wishes, and hopes. Yeah, like talking about women's fantasies, wishes, and hopes. You can think about that in terms of what Freud talks about in some of his early work. Oh, I lost the part there. All right. It is formed out of the raw materials of women's desire to talk and Freud's desire to listen. Yeah, because he he developed psychoanalysis like talking therapy. Hey, maybe if you talk about your emotions, you can help deal with them. What an idea. But he's gonna get to the biases about women in this and fascination with them too. Okay, so it is formed out of the raw materials of women's desire to talk and Freud's desire to listen. The relation between them has been one of mutual fascination, but one that has not always enriched both parties. Well, yeah, of course, he's kind of like taking advantage of women and, you know, being paranoid about diagnoses with some of them in early psychoanalysis in particular, right? The relation between them has been one of mutual fascination, but one that has not always enriched both parties. Relations between psychoanalysis and women have always been and remain today highly ambivalent and fraught with difficulties. Yeah, probably much more back then, obviously, too, right? And like all of these notions of women as being hysterical, and that's like a mental disorder. Oh, she's being hysterical, let's slap her and make her think straightly or straight. All right, so psychoanalysis exerts an appeal for women which can also be seen as a lure or a trap, especially for those who want to challenge the social functions and values attributed to women and femininity in our culture, actively affirmed in psychoanalytic theory. Okay. An appeal for women, which can also be seen as a lure or trap. So he's basically saying that the early psychoanalysts like Freud, maybe Jung too, but he doesn't mention him, they were basically obsessed with women, talking about women and diagnosing all their craziness and psychological and mental health problems. And it was kind of like a trap for just diagnosing women endlessly with everything in like any of their behavior that men don't like, oh, you're being hysterical, that kind of thing. But you basically, I think Lacan is getting to his notion that Freud was obsessed with this, but Zizek would say that Lacan was obsessed with women too, especially obviously in his book on feminism. All right, Freud's insights oh, wait, I'll have to go to the next page here. Freud's insights owe more than he can acknowledge to the loquacious brilliance of his first patients, female hysterics. Yeah, he references a lot of them in his early books, right? Specific cases of women he was talking to and diagnosing. His conception of psychoanalytic method remained, even to the end of his life, remarkably close to that talking cure, talk therapy, aka psychoanalysis, right? Anna O. So that's an example of a patient in one of his books. Anna O. so astutely described. And if Freud is indebted to a vocal of hysterical femininity, interesting. So too Lacan's earliest researches in psychoanalysis relied on the fascinating discourse of, see, he had him a session too, fascinating discourse of mad women, psychotics, paranoiacs, hysterics, mystics. Like, you're acting crazy, women. You're mad, psychotic, paranoid, hysterical, and a mystic. You can think of that in terms of like witches during the Salem witch trials and during medieval times, of course, or any like Christian mystics or mystics of any type of religion, especially female ones. You could see them as being like diagnosably insane, according to Freud and Lacan, especially that period of time, right? Like we're talking about the fairly well, I guess maybe like the mid 20th century or so, if we're talking about Lacan, probably. Um, so, mad women, psychotics, paranoiacs, hysterics, and mystics. The whole cast of characters in his early work consists of women. All of his, I didn't know that. All of Freud and Lacan's, I think you could say that first early cases, but especially Lacan, were women. All of the psychological cases that at least Lacan examined were women. Not a single man is present. I didn't know that. So, like, you could easily say from that bias that, bro, women are crazy. Men are so sane in comparison to women, that sort of thing. Not a single man is present. He was a man who never stopped talking about women. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's it's interesting. I wanted to get into learning more about Jacques Lacan because he's one of Slavoj Zizek's main influences, of course, along with Hegel and Marx. And I've been learning more about Hegel and Marx. But it's interesting to get into psychoanalysis because, especially books about psychoanalysis, are obviously more about psychoanalysis. But Lacan is somewhat of a philosopher too, so sort of like the way that Freud was. So he talks about feminism in a philosophical way, and basically is talking about how Freud is like obsessed with women in his all of his earliest examples, psychoanalysis and like diagnosing women left and right. You're hysterical, women, shut up. That sort of shit, right? So yeah, it's interesting that basically the first psychoanalysts, because they're like seeing women more crazy than men, presumably, were like diagnosing women left and right. And yeah, by that logic, clearly the first psychoanalysts like Lacan and Freud were way too insanely fucking obsessed with women, man.